Hello, Pickled Onion Knight here with my long overdue return to YouTube. Now, what I'm doing here is basically a sort of catch-up video, like what I've been doing, what I plan to do, and such and such and such. Now, I would normally do this while I'm doing a pickups video. The reason I'm not doing that is because I think that the next pickups video is going to be quite long, hopefully with a lot of interesting stories to tell, because the pickups will probably be the next video after this. And not that I've got an amazing amount of new stuff, but a lot of it is kind of niche, kind of interesting stuff that maybe I want to go on a bit. I want to go on about for a bit. So what I've decided to do is, because I haven't uploaded anything in about 2 or 3 months now, is just do one of these videos and get it all out of the way separately. In case you're not interested, you can just skip this one. So what this is going to be about is basically me explaining what I've been doing, why I haven't been uploading anything, and also try and explain what I'm going to hopefully do in the future, and also some audience feedback as well. So I'm going to lump it all into the one video. So stay tuned if any of that interests you. If not, you can skip to whatever I upload next. Or go back and look at some of my old stuff. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so where have I been? I basically had to take a break. I was jotting down bits and pieces and some ideas of stuff that I wanted to do. Now, some of the stuff I want to do is going to require an investment of some new equipment. Mostly green screen type stuff, because I wanted to do something a little bit interesting, maybe a little bit niche-er. But it's all ideas, it's pie in the sky at the moment, and it's going to take me a little bit of investment in time and money. And I just haven't got round to it. Talking of time and money, that's the other reason why I haven't been on. I've been trying to earn some money, so I haven't really had the time to dedicate to doing YouTube. I haven't had the time to do anything, because I've been trying to earn. And that, you know, pays for my splendorous lifestyle. So this is what tends to happen is, you know, you have to earn so the money goes up, but the time goes down. And that's basically what happened. Also, there's some other stuff that's going on, you know, friends and family stuff that doesn't really affect anything I do here, but it has taken up quite a lot of my time of late. But obviously I'm not going to go into that. You know, names will remain nameless. Anyway, so the first thing I want to talk about is about this time last year, or maybe just before this time last year, I was talking about moving into a new premises, so that you wouldn't have to look at these natty curtains anymore. That looks like it's not happening anytime soon. Now, there's been a lot of time invested in doing that, which is basically seems to have been time wasted, and a certain amount of money, but not very much. So that it doesn't look like I'm going to be moving anytime soon. I'm still going to be here. So that's really unfortunate for me. It means that I've got to now rethink my future plans personally. That's another thing that's sort of led to my time being taken up, although not very much of it, I have to say, comparatively. But it does mean that I have to rethink a few things, and some things need to be shelved, some things need to be redrawn. So that's the sort of personal stuff out of the way. So on to the video stuff. Now, if you've been paying attention, you'll know that one of the things I was trying to do was build an emulator PC. I made a big video on this, outlined all my plans for doing it, and I have actually recorded several hours of stuff, probably getting on for about 7 or 8 hours worth of stuff, which I will then obviously have to edit down. The trouble is, I've got to the point now where I am. See, the trouble is, the front end I'd chosen was Hyperspin with Hyperlaunch, and the trouble with that is I have got so annoyed with it, literally to the point of it's at the point of lunacy now. The stuff I have got to go in and reconfigure over and over and over again. Bearing in mind this is for thousands of ROMs that I've got to manually reconfigure, and I am so fed up with it. Now, I used to use an emulator that was called Maximus Arcade. A front end that was called Maximus Arcade, and I still have a license for that. I don't know where the software is. I seem to have lost that on a disk somewhere. But I still have the license. I still have the license email. So I might go and have a look if that's still available and start the whole thing again. Because to be perfectly honest with you, I'm about 10 emulators in now, and the only one that's actually working properly through the front end exactly the way it should is the Kega Fusion one, which is the Sega Mega Drive Master System and Mega CD 32X emulator, sorry. That's the only one that is actually working properly and doing what it's supposed to do. Hyperspin is just needlessly overcomplicating everything. And while I'm on the subject of that, MAME is utterly ridiculous these days. I mean, honestly, it is hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes now for the full latest MAME package, and to be perfectly honest with you, it's just not worth it. I'm going to go back to an older version of MAME. I'm you know, for those of you that really like your sort of late 2000s arcade fighting games, I'm sorry, there's going to be nothing there for you, because that's what it all is. That's basically what's been added, and it is so bloated now. MAME is so bloated, it is just not worth working with anymore. So I'm going to roll that back to an older version, and hopefully that all works perfectly. So basically I'm going to go back to a setup equivalent to what I had 4 or 5 years ago, and just do that, because that worked perfectly. It didn't look as snazzy, but it worked absolutely perfectly. It was push of a button, every game worked, and it took no time at all to set up. So I'm going to rethink that entire section. I'm going to keep the old videos up that I've already uploaded, but the new stuff I've got in the pipeline for that is basically all going to be scrubbed, because I'm not continuing with it any longer. It is too much work for what you actually end up with. So I'm just not going to bother. So that's that. I promised a PS2 modding video, and also a PlayStation 2 video on the Collect Emulator Void series. Now, that second one is still coming. I haven't recorded it yet, basically because I haven't finished writing it yet. There's still some things that I'm not too clear on with regards of how to upscale a PS2 picture. I'm having real trouble trying to find a good way of explaining how to do it. Basically, when it comes to trying to play a PlayStation 2 on a modern television, this is the point I'm sort of getting stuck on, because there is so much advice out there, all of it contradictory. I mean, if you've ever tried to look yourself, you'll know what I'm talking about. I cannot find a reliable way to do it that's going to work for all versions of the console. And that's what I'm stuck on at the moment. Once I've got that figured out for myself, and I've tried all these things, then that video is going to happen. Because that is something that does need to be added in, unfortunately. Because the whole idea of that section is, what is it like to collect for now? Well, obviously it's completely useless to collect for if it doesn't work with your television these days. So that is becoming an issue. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, because I want to get on to something else. The PS3 reviews, I've simply not had the time. The No Man's Sky stuff, I've got stuff that's ready to be put up. I've got 2 more videos I think that are ready to go up. I just haven't got around to rendering them. But to be perfectly honest, I haven't played No Man's Sky in 7 weeks. I've just sort of got bored of it. I've got to the point where I've done everything. I've built the base. I've, spoiler alert, got myself a freighter, earned enough money to do that. I've maxed out the suit slots, and I'm kind of done with it. I may go back to it, but I'm just not. The missions aren't drawing me in, and it's a shame, because I really do like the game, but it's just it's A to B to C. You know, there's no. I think it suffers from a lack of story somewhat, because I've sort of done the story missions, and there's, you know, it's kind of just inching my way now to the end of the game, and you know, it's like sort of Minecraft. I mean, I was playing Minecraft for a while, and it sort of suffers from the same thing. I mean, yeah, once you've killed the Ender Dragon, you know, you've built your house, you've got your storage system sorted out, you've made some interesting redstone gadgets, you're kind of done with it, and all you really do is start again. You know, it's that kind of thing. It's like, well, what do I do now? You know, I've done the things that I'm supposed to do. What do I do now? So I've kind of got bored with No Man's Sky. Final Fantasy X. Now, I know I haven't done one of these in over a year. I fully intend to continue with it at some point. The trouble is, I'm at that point now where, in order to do one 30-40 minute video, which is what I was doing, it's because I'm now at the point where I'm trying to max out the characters and max out the stats and explain how that's done. That might take me 10 minutes to explain, but to actually do those things and record that footage, you're talking 3-4 days work. And at the moment, and in fact for a long time, I have not been able to set aside 3 or 4 days in order to do that. Now, what I was thinking about was maybe I take a couple of days off work and I just get on and do it. But to be perfectly honest with you, if I take a couple of days off work, I'm going to go do something useful, you know, in my life. I'm not going to take a few days off to play a single game like that. So I mean, I fully intend on returning to it, but it is finding the time. It may be a case of, you know, if I do find myself with a day off the next day, I do something overnight. So that might be an issue, you know, like I can maybe start playing 8 o'clock in the evening, play through till maybe 4 a.m. and get that footage then condensed down a few days later. Which is how I'm sort of writing a rough plan of how I'm going to tackle it to actually capture the footage, because anyone who's done this will know that is the killer. Is you may capture 8 hours worth of stuff, but then that only turns into sort of 10-20 minutes sometimes on the screen. So that's the issue with that. A Link to the Past. I was doing a playthrough of that. I think I got as far as the first palace in the Dark World. Now, I have all the footage for that. I just have to do the voiceover. It's basically a case of editing, and again, it's something I have to find the time to do. Now, that is only sort of 8 or so hours of footage that's going to be condensed into 2 or 3 videos, perhaps. But again, it's finding the time to actually sit down and edit through that. So that's a thing. So what can I do? I mean, the easiest stuff to make is the stuff I do here, where I just sit and I have a rough draft of what I want to say and I talk through some things. Now, that is obviously the easiest stuff to make. So I've been trying to figure out how I can do that. So I've got some plans, some rough ideas of what I want to do with that, where I'm just sitting here talking to a screen. Now, I may decide to change it up and do it from a standing perspective, because I think one of the major issues I've got is the sound in this room isn't very good, although this is the best room for me to record in at the moment. So, but I might actually start doing this from a standing perspective somewhere maybe over there. But again, I kind of want to do that. You know, if I'm going to do it from a standing up perspective, then I'm going to have to rearrange how my setup is here. I'm going to have to think about how I light that, because at the moment it's quite good, because I've got a light source here, I've got a light source here and here. If I wanted to go over there, then I'm going to have to find a way to light that. Or alternatively, I can move this table out of the way and sort of be here, but then I'd have to sort of move it all back. It's a pain. Anyway, So, but one of the plans of stuff that I want to do for getting down to the meat of the videos that I want to do, I do want to go over some stuff over my own history with games, console games, my own history with computing, my own history with arcade stuff, sort of like a personal history. So that when people watch my stuff, they know exactly where I'm coming from. One thing I do want to tackle quite a bit is sort of gaming from a European stroke British perspective, because one thing I have noticed on YouTube, and it's no fault of YouTube, I mean that's just the way it is that it is very, very much from a US centric perspective. So and that's not a bad thing, because like I've said many times in these videos, the US and Canada is the biggest gaming market on the planet. I mean, there's clearly a reason for that, but there's also millions and millions of us that don't have the same perspective. I mean, for instance, not so much today, because everything is sort of the same today, but for instance, in Britain, we didn't have a games crash. In Britain, we didn't really care about Nintendo, and still don't. It's. I know Americans and Canadians particularly don't want to hear this, and any Japanese people watching, you probably don't want to hear this either. But honestly, Europe doesn't give a crap about Nintendo. We really genuinely don't. We don't care. As a nation, I mean, there are people who do. Obviously, there are individuals that grew up with Nintendos. I am one of them. Just to full disclosure, I had a Nintendo. I had a Super Nintendo. I didn't have a Game Boy. My sister had a Game Boy. But honestly, Nintendo isn't really a thing here, and never has been. But aside from that, I just want to do something from, while I go through my personal history with gaming, and then also try and put that in the context where sort of the wider gaming world around me as I was coming up. So like what I was into, what my friends were into, where we played this game, where we played that game, what kind of arcade scene was around in Britain at the time, like a sort of historical thing, but from the perspective of one person, no real facts, just sort of memories, I suppose, nostalgia, pointless nostalgia, that sort of thing. So again, that's stuff that is at the moment in rough draft that has to be written into actual finished things. Now, that might end up being a bit dry, but I won't know till I've done it. So we'll just have to see how that turns out. So like I said at the beginning, the next video will be a pickups video. And there is some proper interesting stuff coming up in that video. Now, obviously, I haven't done it yet, so I don't know exactly what I'm going to say about each of the sort of niche or rare items that I've picked up. But I know it is going to be a biggie. I know there's going to be some stuff that I do want to go into in depth. Maybe some interesting stories behind it. I don't know. That'll be obviously for you to judge. But trust me when I say it will be one worth watching. I have crossed some things off my list that have been sat there for a long, long time. Stuff that I really, really wanted to get hold of. So that will be hopefully a good video. So I want to move on now to a little bit of audience feedback and a little bit of Q&A. So I now sit at 104 subscribers, which doesn't sound very much, but it pleases me immensely. I honestly didn't even expect that. Now, thanks to the way that YouTube now decides it's going to monetize its content, my videos are effectively rendered worthless with that many subscribers, as you well know. Because you have to be a certain threshold, I think it's 4,000, for your videos to be monetized. Now, to be fair, I was making literally pennies up until this point. But it was nice to even do that. It was nice, even if your stuff was worth tuppence, it was still nice that it was worth something. Now all my stuff is rendered absolutely worthless until the point where enough people view it that it actually becomes worthwhile again. Although I think YouTube is still actually showing adverts on my stuff, so somebody's making money out of it anyway. But the thing that I love about it is that people are actually starting to give me feedback. And I'm not talking about the idiots, because there's always idiots that don't see. I don't put out stuff really for idiots. I'll give you an example. Basically, one of the videos I did was about how I suspect there is not going to be such a thing as an N64 Classic. And it seems to me that a lot of people didn't watch the beginning of that video. It seems to me that a few people didn't watch any of the video. They just read the title and put a comment. Because I think I went to great pains to explain exactly why and the reasons behind it. But if you go and look at that video, it is it is the most unliked video I have ever done. And probably with good reason. I think going back to the fact that a lot of people who watch that video won't hear a word said against Nintendo, and I wasn't really bashing Nintendo. To be fair, I was just making the point that I didn't think, as a company, that releasing an N64 Classic would be worthwhile to them, and I still don't think that, or even worthwhile to the consumer. And again, if you go and watch that video, you'll hopefully I explain quite concisely why I think that. One of the other videos I did was a Warhawk review for the PlayStation 3. Now, but this is what I mean. I expect the very least, if somebody is going to watch a review that I've done, is to know the context in which I've done the review. And I said very clearly at the start of that video, I also said very clearly in the video, and I said very clearly as an introduction to the PlayStation 3 reviews that I was doing, that I was reviewing the content on disc only. Everyone who made a comment on that video, and this is another one that is pretty well universally unliked, pretty much everyone that's made a comment on that video has been making comments telling me I'm an idiot, I'm a moron, you can play it over network, you can play it this, you can play it online. But that's not the point. The point of the review was to review the content on the disc. No online, no updates, no network. That is the point. If you go out and buy that game, you're not going to necessarily be able to network your PlayStation 3 with somebody else who has that game. You're also not going to be necessarily able to, in 10 years' time, play that game online. The idea behind the PlayStation 3 reviews is content on disc, for the reason that if somebody watches that review in 10 years' time, it will still apply to the thing that they're about to buy. Whereas all this other stuff, all this online play, network play, is not going to apply to anyone. It is now, and that is it, then it's gone. It'd be like the people that still play Farmville now. Try getting a friend. Just try. You've got to do a task on Farmville. Try finding 30 friends to help with that task today. It's not going to happen. And it's the same sort of thing. But the actual audience feedback. Now, I did a video on the Pokemon Gotcha. When was it? It was probably about 3 months ago, maybe a bit longer than that. Anyway, this was like the Pokemon Go Watch thing that was officially released. There was a third-party version released, which is actually better. And I've got 2 questions from that video, which I'm going to answer here. I will probably also answer it on the video itself, but I'm going to answer it here just in case anyone was wondering. So this one is from Patrick Bradley. Are you going to make a follow-up video about the Gotcha, or Gotcha, rather? Just wondering, and have you used it a lot since you got the device? Since you got the device. 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 Sin The answer to that is no. I'm not going to make a follow-up video, and the reason for that is because I haven't been using it. I used it for a couple of weeks. It worked perfectly fine, and then I got completely and utterly bored with it. The game was chewing through my phone battery like nobody's business, because this thing where you can turn the phone upside down and suspend the thing, I did mention in the video, but it doesn't seem to work that well on my phone. And yeah, so if I'm out, and to be perfectly honest with you, a lot of times I don't take my phone out. I leave it at home, because if I'm out for the day doing something that I want to do, I don't want people ringing me, so I tend to leave my phone at home as a general rule if I have time off. The other question came from L.Jesus. So that's L.Jesus, I assume Little Jesus or Lefty Jesus, I don't know. Initial L. And his question on that same video was, half of the Amazon reviews for the gotcha are 1 stars talking about charging issues. If you have problems in a month, make a follow-up video. It seems like it works long enough to fool people until it's too late for the returns. Now, I didn't run into any issues with charging myself, but what I did notice is that the charging cradle is not particularly well designed. You're never quite sure, and again this is something I mentioned in the video, you're never quite sure whether it's charging or not. I think that might be part of the issue, because it is a very fiddly device. It's quite fiddly to get out of the strap, and it's quite fiddly to sort of get in and into the charger and have it seated correctly. Now, what I could do is actually just go and try it and see if it charges, because, like I say, it's been idle for a while. I imagine it's probably ran out of battery, and see how it works. So I might well do that, but I'm not going to do a separate video about that. I may mention it in a future one of these videos or something. I'm simply not sure. So I hope that answers your question, L.Jesus. And your question, Patrick Bradley. So one of the other videos that I get a lot of feedback about is, I did one, and I am going to do another version of this video, and I'll explain why in a minute. I did a video probably 2 years ago, or getting on for 2 years ago, where I explained my method for upscaling older consoles to a modern television. Now, if you haven't seen that video, I suggest you go and see it. But what it basically talks about is it is a really dirt cheap SCART converter, which upscales a RGB SCART to HDMI. Now, I am aware it is not the best one on the market. You know, a lot of people say things like, you know, like the Frame Meister's a good idea. But, and that probably is the best one on the market. But the trouble with the Frame Meister is the expense. Now, they're not manufactured anymore, so you have to buy a second-hand one. And people know that these things are sought after, so they go for an absolute fortune. But not only do you need to buy the Frame Meister itself, you need to buy the Euroscart converter for the Frame Meister, because out of the box, as I'm aware, it only supports JP21 SCART, which is fine if that's what you're using, but most people, certainly in Europe and certainly in the US as well, are buying Euroscart plugs. And Euroscart will not work with JP21, so you've got to have the converter. Also, you have to buy a remote control overlay, because the remote control for the Frame Meister is in Japanese, so you then have to go and buy a separate overlay. So, I mean, how much money are you talking? You're talking quite a lot of money. My method for doing it was the thing I bought off of Amazon, which was £25. Now, if I were to take a picture from a Frame Meister and a picture from the thing I bought side by side, yes, mine would look worse. But does it look 8 times worse? Does it look, you know, maybe 10 times worse? Because that's the kind of price difference you're talking. You know, £25 to 250, 300 plus. You know, that's the kind of difference. And if you're talking a price increase of 10 times, does it look 10 times worse? I don't think so. I think it's good. It's fine for most people, is what I'm saying. But after defending that, what I'm going to say is I am going to have to do an update video for that, because there are these anomalous consoles in the middle. And the ones I'm talking about are the Dreamcast, the Xbox, the original Xbox, the PlayStation 2, the Nintendo Wii, and to a certain degree, the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Because they will be on completely different methods of how to get them to work on a modern television. Now, you may go, well, yeah, but an Xbox 360 and a PlayStation 3 work on a modern television fine. And yes, they do. You'd be absolutely right. But for the purposes of capturing, it's a different story. So I'm going to throw that in as well as part of this updated video. Because if you've ever tried doing it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Trying to capture footage from these consoles is a different kettle of fish. And this brings me on to the next thing. So this is 2 comments that I've had on that particular video, and the first one is this. Brendan Shavin left this comment. I tried that converter, it's awful. I found a Sony DVD recorder with a SCART input and HDMI output, and it looks amazing. And he'd be absolutely right. It would look amazing. But try finding a half-decently priced DVD recorder, bearing in mind that DVD recorders aren't made anymore, and they haven't been made for a while. Now, I have a Samsung one, which is really good. No, it's not Samsung. It's Toshiba, I think. Anyway, it's Korean. And that is a fantastic option for that sort of thing, because not only does it take in a SCART input, but it also takes in a standard aerial input, so like a coaxial. So if at some point in the future I bought an Atari and wanted to plug that in, then I would be able to run that through this thing and it would come out as an HDMI signal. But the trouble is, there is no upscaling. So yes, that is a good method if you just want to plug it in and to get it to play on your television, but there is no upscaling. And to be perfectly honest, I still use the upscaling box that I was talking about in the video, for the simple reason that I have tried using the console through my video recorder, my DVD recorder that I have, and the picture just looks so grainy. No, maybe with a high quality Sony one, I don't know. But like I say, I'm pretty sure it's a Samsung or a Toshiba or something. Anyway, it's definitely a Korean one. Might even be LG. But it does everything, and it still doesn't look as good, in my opinion. But that might just be my television. That could be any number of things. But I'm just going to, I can only test what I can test, and this is what works for me. So, hope that was a reply to you, Brendan Shavin. Now, Hope Jester, who's a fellow, left another comment on that video. I am trying to upscale my original Xbox to 16:9 as I want to capture with a capture card. Any advice? Simply, not really. It depends on your capture card, for a start. The best picture you'll be able to get out of an Xbox 3, an original Xbox, as far as I'm aware, is a component signal. Now, if your graphics card is HDMI, you're going to run into problems. I'm aware there's an Xbox to HDMI converter, but as to how good it is, I can't speak to. I don't own one. I don't know where you can get them. I've had a look on Amazon, and they are out of stock, and have been for several months. I have no clue. And as far as I'm aware, that doesn't upscale it to 16:9. You have to do that I think you have to jailbreak the console to do that. But this is all stuff that I will properly go through for a long time in detail when I do an update to that video. But for now, I hope that answers the question. And what's the next one? Yes, no, this is my favourite comment. This is my pick of the comments, and this goes into something that I mentioned earlier. And this is from Jammy Skis. So Jamys, Jammy Skis, I suppose, SKIS. Yeah. And this was on, I think, one of the, I don't know which PS3 review video that was, but it's definitely on one of them. And a great idea to do reviews of PS3 games without patching or internet. Helps to see how preservable individual games are in the long run. The loading game is Xevious, by the way. So that would be on the Ridge Racer one then, I'm guessing. Yeah, because if it's a loading game, it's a Namco one. I've only done two. I think I've only done one Namco game so far, so that would be Ridge Racer. So yeah, Jammy Skis totally gets what I'm trying to do. Thank you for that if you're watching. Shout out to Jammy Skis, who absolutely must have watched the first video in that series to know exactly what it is I am trying to do. But like I say, I do mention it when I'm doing the videos at the beginning of them, or I try to remember and mention that. So yeah, that's all the audience feedback I want to talk about. Now, there is a much longer list that I nearly typed and printed out to bring along of much more negative comments on the videos, but I decided I'm not going to give these people any more of a forum than, well, they've already had more of a forum they deserve by leaving comments on the video in the first place, and I'm not going to go through that again. But suffice it to say, these are my pick of comments, so thank you to those 5 people. It is nice when people leave a comment, but I can do without the negative comments, especially if it's obvious from the comment that either you haven't watched the video or you're a moron. Now, I don't know how you can self-certificate being a moron. What you can do is if you're worried you might be a moron, you can post a comment up and let the whole world see it, and we will all silently judge you and know you're a moron. That's it. That's all I can say. That is probably my best advice for that, is continue typing, continue posting stuff up wherever you post it, you know, on YouTube perhaps, or maybe on Twitter, a letter to your favourite celebrity, or scrawled in feces on the wall of a local public lavatory. Anywhere you like, just keep writing stuff. You know, and don't forget to put your real name. That is very important. I know everyone loves a pseudonym these days, but don't forget to put your real name, because everyone sees it, especially if it's linked to your Facebook page. That's really good, because then I can go and find out who you are, and I can see what you get up to in your daily life, and it's very obvious that you're a boring that has so much time to write just vile abuse to people all over YouTube. Now, for a lot of these comments, they have been deleted, so don't worry. I read them, and as soon as I notice they're there, if I think they're genuinely offensive, and by the way, lots of people are loving the internet now. You can't get enough of that. Now, I don't know what I do in particular. Luckily, YouTube filters that out as a matter of course on my channel, but I do get to see what has been rejected. And you love that word, don't you? All these people, these keyboard warriors, they love that word. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Suffice it to say, these are the ones I like. The ones I've read out are the ones I liked. This is a video of my comeback to YouTube. Hopefully it's been successful. Again, leave a comment if you want, or you can go on the Twitter thing, which is somewhere here-ish. I'm not going to do an end card, and the next video is going to be my pickups. Now, I haven't done a pickups video since November, I think the beginning of November, so it's long overdue. We're now just about to head into May. What are we, the middle of April? Yeah, so it's May next month, so there's a lot of stuff. I hope you get a kick out of that. I really do. I advise you to watch that, because there is some, like I said, and I've said a couple of times now, there really is some good stuff in there and some quite interesting stuff as far as I'm concerned too. You might get a kick out of it. Or yeah, you can drop a like or whatever it is you do. Not that it matters at the moment, because like I say, I have got so few subscribers and so few watch time that none of my content is monetized at the moment anyway. So even unless everyone suddenly, you know, unless 10,000 people decide to give me a like or a subscribe, it's really going to make no difference. But it's appreciated anyway, and just know that I do read the comments, I do see it all, even the stuff that YouTube puts in the spam filter. I still read through it on occasion just to, you know what kind of people are clicking on my video for 20 seconds. And suffice it to say, I'm ashamed of probably 90% of you. But that's it. I have been the Pickled Onion Knight, and I will see you in another video. That might end up being a bit dry, but I won't know till I've done it. So we'll just have to see how that turns out. Talking of dry, my throat is really dry. I haven't spoken at length like this for a while. Not used to it. So like I said at the beginning,